Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is Friday night, June the 4th, 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta. I'm so happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, and it's a half-an-hour live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and I have my chat room open if anybody wants to come and sit in there. And this week we're covering the Child Abuse Handbook, which was compiled by Donna Shear and Sandra Potter from Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And Donna Shear is the president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. She's also a best-selling author and a mom, and she's just busy, just involved in so many things. Sandra Potter is a mother. She is the founder and CEO of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. She is very active in her own community, sits on a child abuse board, and she's just they're all just such lovely people. Every single person involved with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, so many awesome, wonderful people and supporters. So that handbook is just awesome. I got my copy, and I actually printed it off. You can get your copy of the Child Abuse Handbook just free. It's free PDF download. And you can get your copy from the website at www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. And you can really, if you read through it even once, you will have enough knowledge to even, just to be prepared to know what the signs and symptoms are of child abuse, all the different types of child abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, psychological, and what to look for, signs and symptoms, and as well how to report it, and all kinds of resources and links, different states, telephone numbers for resources for people, and telephone numbers for different organizations within the different states in the U.S., and it's just a great resource. So I hope everyone will get their copy, read through it, check it out, learn the signs and symptoms. You could help save a child's life. And that's the whole key here, right? So I'm so glad that you can tune in, and that's what we're going to continue looking at tonight. And I'm not a professional. I don't hold any professional counseling certificates, therapist certificates, or anything like that. I'm just an advocate. I stand up for child rights, and I study child rights, and I'm a part-time student in between courses at MRU here in Calgary, studying international community development, the rights of the child, and I'm just really, very much interested in saving children's lives all around the world, but also in North America. And so I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. It's a volunteer position, which I'm so happy to do. I'm so happy to stand with them and just be one more voice, with theirs to really to spread awareness, education, and prevention of child abuse, right? So that's the whole key. I'm not a professional, so this is not a professional show. And so, listen at your own discretion. I cover all topics of abuse, and the topics of abuse are very sensitive. So if you think the show might bother you, you have to turn it off. You have to listen at your own discretion. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I say this on every show because it is so important, you have to have an adult okay it that you can listen to these shows. I would hope that you have someone in your life that cares about what you're doing and what you're doing online, because I have no idea where the Blog Talk players are now. They could be placed on other websites, and so I don't know how young people are that are listening to the shows. And so it's so important, if you're a young person, to get someone to okay it that you can listen to these shows. There's a lot of adult content on here, and really it is ultimately about stopping child abuse, preventing child abuse, and human rights abuses, but there's a lot of adult content, and that's why I ask young people to have permission to listen to the show. And you should have adults kind of know what you're doing online. Someone who cares about you, a parent or caregiver, or a teacher at school, guidance counselor, coach, somebody who's there, who you trust and has a good head on their shoulders. Maybe they could listen to one of the shows, an archive or something, and see if it's okay if you listen to this show, right? It's so important. You need to keep yourself safe, and you need to keep yourself alive. And there's a lot of crazy people out there in the world, and there's a lot of child sexual predators out there trying to get a hold of children online. And that's the whole issue. You need to become aware. You need to get the education so you can protect yourself from child sexual predators, online child sexual predators. And there's websites out there full of great information. Just start typing into your browser, online safety for children, or child safety online, or anything like that, internet safety. It'll bring up all kinds of websites with good information on there on how to keep yourself safe, how to keep your family safe, and your friends safe. because you do. You want to make sure you get the education. It's no good to live in fear, but the whole idea is that the more education you have, the better you'll be able to protect yourself and your family, and you know what I mean? It's just such a good thing. So that's why I say this on every show. So we got about 25 minutes left, and I want to continue on with this article, this Child Abuse Handbook, really. We were looking at it actually all week, Monday, Wednesday night, and some of last week, I think, too. There's statistics. We went through statistics and what is child abuse and child abuse facts, worldwide statistics, signs of child abuse. We went through the signs of physical child abuse. We also were looked at signs of sexual abuse. And now we're actually looking at child abuse effects, and that's the next part of this PDF download. And I'm just reading right from the page, so you can pull this up and read along with me if you like, at www.Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, the Child Abuse Handbook, a free PDF download. So that's what I'm reading from. And it says here, the effects of child abuse are largely related to the extent of the abuse. If you're reading this, it's likely you're concerned about the more extensive abuses. Even the milder seeming types of neglect and emotional abuse can have serious effects on you or a person, right? The abuse seems like normal family life, which you will try to duplicate when you start a family. That's if someone's been abused, right? And they carry on that cycle. Obviously, all forms of abuse have serious effects on your idea of who you are, how you perform in school, on the job, how you make and keep friends, who you choose for friends, and how you treat your own spouse and children. Though it probably isn't even a majority, many abused children grow up to abuse their children. And that's sad. They just pass the cycle right along. And not all children who are abused grow up to abuse their own children. That's a fact. There's lots and lots that don't, and they realize that the abuse that they suffered was wrong, and maybe they've gotten help and they've learned how to cope and to deal with things, and that's always the best case scenario. And then they don't go on to abuse their children, but some do, and that's just a fact. It's the cycle of abuse, right? And it does continue on. It says here, abused children tend to do more poorly in school, have a much higher delinquency and dropout rate, tend towards torturing animals, even other children. They tend to be reclusive and antisocial, and severe abuse leaves severe, invisible emotional scars that, unless dealt with, can cripple important areas of your life. This is why, if you have been abused or if you are helping an abused child, you must get professional help to begin to heal and recover a normal, happy life. And so this is what they've written here. Physical child abuse effects vary from child to child depending on 6 factors. And it says here, they list these off: severity of the physical abuse, frequency of the physical abuse, age of the child when physical abuse began, child's relationship to the abuser, availability of support persons, and child's ability to cope. So all those things will come into play, right, these factors. And there's probably more, but they list off 6 here that vary, right, depending on how the severity of the abuse, the frequency of the abuse, the age of the child when the abuse started happening, how long it went on, right, the relationship of the child to the abuser, and if there were any support persons around to help the child, right, and also the child's ability to cope, because all people are different, everyone handles things differently, and because we are all different, right, so that's the whole issue. It just varies, and it just varies so widely, right. It says molested children suffer many losses, including self-esteem and self-worth, trust. Trust is one. Childhood, including the opportunity to play and learn, the opportunity for normal growth and development, intimacy, control over his or her body, normal loving and nurturing, safety and security. And those are just some of the things that children who are molested actually go through. And it's just horrible. It's just so sad. And this whole issue of the not having control over his or her own body, right? Now that's a huge issue, for children, right? Because they don't have control, right? And that's why we have to stop abuse, and that's why it's so important that we get help for people. For adult survivors, get help, and also that we stop child abuse, right? Because that's the whole issue. It's so damaging that it does affect pretty much every area of a child's life, right? People might think, oh well, how could it if they've never experienced it, they might think, well, how could that really be such a big deal? How could that have affected these children like so that it just makes their life so hard to live, and why would they be having such a hard time? And really, it does affect a child's whole life, you know what I mean? And then they grow up, and if they don't get help, quite often they, they have a hard time coping in just normal circumstances, normal relationships with people, dating and whatnot. They have a real hard time with their own sexuality a lot of times if there was abuse, like sexual abuse or molestation. It just really does affect a child's whole life, and that's why it's just so important that that we get these children some help. First of all, if they have been abused, and if you've been abused as a child, then it's very important to get yourself some help, and just to know that there is help out there, and there is help available. There's all kinds of online group support groups out there for adult survivors of child abuse, which are just awesome. And there are all kinds of, like peer support groups. There are, there's counselors, therapists, and whatnot, and you have to make sure that you're very specific on what type of counselor that you would get, because the whole issue is you want to get one that specializes sort of in what you've been through and dealt with, and that way they're really specialized, so they can really work with you. And I think that is just so important, right? Just to know that we can get help, right? Anyone who's been abused can get help, and there's different ways. So, if you're not a person who likes group, the whole idea of group support, because you're just a very private person and you find it would be very uncomfortable to talk to people in a group setting, then you could go and find a more one-on-one type of counseling and therapy, right? Which is so important, right? So we have to really look, survivors of child abuse have to look very closely at what would work for them, right? Because it just has such a huge effect on children, right? It's just it's so bad. Children suffer many losses. They really lose their whole, innocence and their whole, just their whole selves, right, when they're abused. And the whole issue is they have to learn then, how to get that back, and how to overcome the abuse, and then how to find themselves. You know what I mean? So that's just the whole issue. It is so important that people reach out and get help. And physical abuse, it leaves not only the physical damage and the physical scars, but it leaves a lot of emotional and psychological scars as well. And that's the whole issue. It's not just the physical abuse. If a child survives physical abuse and survives the actual abuse that was inflicted upon them, the scars and stuff and the broken bones, they can mend and stuff like that. That's not the part that hurts. It's the pain in people's hearts, and it's just the whole pain of being abused, that is the problem. It's the emotional and the psychological damage that it does. And so that's why it's just so important for people to realize this and to make sure that they do get some help if they've been abused, or if they know someone who's been abused, to make sure that they get themselves some help, right? So important. And, just really self-esteem and self-worth is just such a huge issue. When children are abused, they quite often really have a real low self-esteem, If there was especially if there was a lot of verbal and emotional abuse, then the child will grow up feeling like lesser than, okay, I'm not good enough because my parents told me that I was bad, or they, the names that they called me were true. A lot of times children will believe what their parents are telling them, and they'll believe that what their parents are saying is true, see? And that's the whole issue. It's very hard to overcome that. And so that's why it's just so important for people to realize that verbal abuse hurts, and emotional abuse is very, very damaging, and it lasts a lifetime, really. And so the whole issue is to make sure that you get, that we, first of all, that we need to stop this, and second of all, that children would get help, right? So important, because that's why we have to stop child abuse. This is the whole issue, because this is the type of thing. Then a lot of times people, if they were abused as children, then they go on to abuse their own children, which is very, very sad, right? Because that's the whole issue. It's the whole cycle of abuse, right? And that's really what we need to stop and what needs to happen, right? So that's just the whole issue. And like they were saying, not every child who was abused would go on to abuse their own children, right? That's the whole thing. So, but it doesn't matter. It's always a possibility to pass the cycle on, and also for re-victimization. There's lots of good information out there about being re-victimized, and it's so important that people get that information. If you were if you're a survivor of child abuse, then you don't want to go on and be re-victimized as an adult, right? And so it's so easy for that to happen, really, which is sad but so true. Because a lot of times people don't know how to set good boundaries, and how to make sure that they're not abused later on in life. You know what I mean? Because they don't have necessarily a good knowledge base on how to not let somebody who's abusive be in their lives. So see, it really does affect a child's life all the way through, and that is really why it's so important to get help. That's why they said, they said this is why if you've been abused or if you're helping an abused child, you must get professional help to begin to heal and recover a normal, happy life. And even if you just, like I said, even group support or anything like that, it's such a good idea, right? Because you can start to heal. Right, so that's the whole thing. And trust is a huge issue with survivors of child abuse. And if you've ever dealt with child abuse, if you've dealt personally with it, then you would understand it's very hard to trust people. You kind of develop a sense that, well, as long as I can keep everybody back, away from me, then I won't be hurt, right? And so you develop this sort of inability to trust people, and it's very sad, but it is something that does happen. There's a break in trust, and it happens with domestic violence survivors as well, and so it's something that happens to people who have been abused, right? And so it's very, very sad and unfortunate, really, that happens. And so that's the whole issue. Trust it's hard to learn how to build that trust. It's something that takes time, and it can be done. You know what I mean? But it does take time. So that's the whole issue. I think if we just realize that there's help out there, and just for people to keep reaching out and keep looking for that help where you can get it, and make sure that you do reach out to somebody, right? Whether it's a friend or a therapist or counselor or whatnot, right? But just to make sure that you do reach out. That's the whole issue, because so important, right? Children they don't deserve to suffer in abuse, and then to grow up and then be an adult who survived child abuse. It's sad to see people suffering, and to know that, just to think that there isn't any help for them, and that nobody cares, or that they can't get any help, because there is help out there, and it's just a matter of really getting that help and making sure that you do get that help, right? It's so important. So I'm just looking for this. I was just going to try to bring up this actual PDF, and I'm just kind of looking through to see where it is, and I sort of don't have it. But anyway, and also the ability, including the opportunity to play and learn, they lose that, right? Because if a child suffers abuse or molestation or sexual abuse or whatnot, their whole lives are changed. You know what I mean? They're no longer these innocent children that they used to be, and it changes the whole dynamics. Quite often they feel that there's something wrong with them, and that they're different, and that they no longer fit in with their friends. This can happen. It kind of isolates them, and if there is abuse going on in the home, right, then obviously there's going to be probably a situation where the child is kind of somewhat isolated from their friends and from other family members, because the abusers don't want anyone to know, that they're abusing this child, right? So quite often, they don't get to play, they don't get to experience the things that normal children would get to experience and have fun, and it's just so sad, really, so incredibly sad that this is going on, and this is why we have to stop it. This is exactly why we have to really stop child abuse. And I believe that we can prevent it and we can stop it. And I believe that all of our voices are necessary to make that happen. And it's just all of us have to stand up and start talking, start making some noise, start checking out to see what's going on with the laws and what's happening in our own communities to really make a difference, right? I think it's just so important. And we can't do enough really for these children, right? To help stop and prevent child abuse. It's going to take every single one of us to get involved and to make this happen. So that's the whole issue. We just cannot put this off any longer. I really believe that just in our own communities, there's places that we can get involved. Shelters, women's shelters. There's children's hospitals that need volunteers. There are probably lots and lots of different kinds of groups within community resource groups that could use volunteers. And just getting the word out to people is another way to help. Anything that we do to try to help stop child abuse, I think, is so important, right? And just getting involved locally is a great idea because it's very important to get involved locally, and that's what I haven't done yet. I've been so busy working. I work full time, and my sweetheart's terminally ill, and so I do spend time with him as well. I don't have any children or anything like that, but I work full time. Plus, I volunteer, and I also have a life. You know what I mean? So I find it very, it is hard, right? I completely understand, and know, how hard it is for people to get involved. But I think even if we all even just volunteered for one day a month, like on the weekend, like one Saturday or something, to a shelter or to a community resource center, or anything where we could actually, if you have children and you work with children, to get involved and volunteer some time. I think that is just so important because it does make a difference. Each and every person that gets involved makes a difference. And, for me, it's just, I find that, what I'm doing online and as far as promoting awareness and education and prevention of child abuse, that was just a start. This is all just very much a start. As well as I was going to school as well, taking courses for international community development and child rights. But I had to put that on hold because I had to, sadly had lost my job and I had to go get another job and I couldn't afford to take the courses. So I'm in between courses. So that's it's unfortunate. But I do plan on continuing on with the courses. But that's the whole issue, right? We all have to get involved if we want to see some real change in this world. And that's the whole issue, right? I mean, we're responsible for this next generation, believe it or not. And what happens what happens tomorrow is a direct result of what we do today. And people just forget that, right? Because they're just so busy just living life and doing their own thing and not thinking about this. So what's going on today is definitely directly going to influence tomorrow. And so if we want to see a better world tomorrow and the next day and the next day, then we're all going to be responsible for this. And it's going to it's going to come down on our heads, really, that we haven't done anything to make any changes to help raise up this next generation of children, right? I don't have kids. I really wish that I did. It's unfortunate I don't have any children and I can't afford to take any in. And so, otherwise I'd be more than happy to. I love children and I wish that I could have children, but I don't have any, and that's just the way it goes. But the whole issue is I want to stand up for children, regardless of whether I have children or not. And because it's so important, who's going to stand up for them if we don't? That's you and me and anybody else who's out there making some noise and doing whatever we can do to get this information out there to people and to make some changes in this world, right? Because this next generation coming up and the next one and the next one, really, if we don't make changes, then it's just going to continue on and get worse. We were looking at some of the statistics there tonight on the Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, and Elizabeth Roberts-Brawley, the Southern Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, was co-hosting with me tonight. Donna Shear couldn't make it, and she had something come up she could not get out of, and so Elizabeth graciously hosted the show with me, and she was bringing up the stats again for people, saying, hey, 5 children will lose their lives, they will be killed at the hands of their parents or caregivers every day. So today and tomorrow and the next day, just, it's pretty much the normal statistics, right, the stats. 1 in 3 girls will be sexually molested or have unwanted sexual contact under the age of 18, and 1 in 6 boys will be either sexually molested or abused in some way under the age of 18. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys, and that's pretty much the stats for all abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, psychological. That's what's being reported. Now we know that most abuse is not reported, and that's the real problem, is that so much abuse is going on, but it's not being reported. So they know that the stats are only good for the numbers that are coming in. So you can imagine how many more. We may as well just say 1 out of every 2 people is abused in some way. And it's probably true. It's just that most people don't want to admit it, and that's their own prerogative if they don't want to admit it. But the whole issue is that we really have to stop abuse. No matter, it doesn't matter whether a person wants to admit they were abused or not. We have to stop abuse, right? And the only way we're going to do that is to make some changes, right? So we'll continue on with the rest of this PDF download, the Child Abuse Handbook, on Monday night. Monday night at Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, Elizabeth Roberts-Brawley and myself are going to look at the Child Abuse Handbook. We're also going to look at some statistics, and we're going to try to find some more updated statistics, because the stats out there are, the ones that you can find readily available are pretty old, and that's the whole issue. I don't know if anybody's actually done any, up-to-date stats for 2010. We're already halfway through 2010, and most of the stats we see are pretty much June 2009. So we're talking they're a year old already. And so we're gonna do some research, and we're gonna see if we can find some more information and some better stats for people, and get this information out to people, and just take another look at the stats, what's going on, currently in the numbers, and how many children are actually dying at the hands of their caregivers and parents, and there was a report going on that in Texas we looked at not too long ago. Elizabeth brought that up on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio at www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers, and she was saying that there was this, well, I actually read it. The article was from a Texas, I'm not sure which city in Texas, but down in the United States, they have so many children who have been abused that there's a waiting list for them to get help. That's in one city, in one state in the United States of America. Now, let me tell you, if that's not a problem, then people just don't know what a problem is. That is a real problem. There's so many child abuse cases right now that the children are on waiting lists to get help. There's something wrong with this whole thing. And they don't know whether it's just an increase in child abuse or whether people are just reporting it more, which is great, because it needs to be reported, it needs to be stopped. And so that's why it's so important to report child abuse. If you know of a child who's being abused, or if you suspect abuse, you need to make the phone call. It's really the law. And, you could be probably brought up on charges if they ever found out that you didn't know, or that you did know and didn't report it. If you know of abuse, you have to report it. And if you even suspect it, you should do the right thing and report it. We have to stop child abuse. That's all there is to it. So we have about a minute left. And, I hope you all have a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday morning with one child abuse survivor to another, 6 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And then Monday night I'll be back on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio with Elizabeth Roberts-Brawley. And then on my own show again, Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. I also have a Mount Bethel Christian Worship and Fellowship Center Bible study on Sunday. I skipped last Sunday, but I will be on there. Or maybe I did a show. I can't remember now. That was last Sunday. But anyway, I'll be doing a show this Sunday. And so you can also tune into that as well. And so I just hope everybody you have a great weekend. Make sure you take care of yourselves. thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I almost have 5,000 shows listened to. I've done about 260 shows, and there's almost 5,000 shows listened to. So thank you so much, whoever's listening. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you just take care of yourselves. If you need something, get a hold of me on blogtalkradio.com or Facebook, and let me know. And if there's anything I can do, or if I can help you find some resources or information, or you just need someone to talk to, please let me know. And otherwise, just have a great weekend, everybody. Take really good care of yourselves. Be safe in everything you do, and watch out for the children in your lives. And make sure that they're safe and that they're okay, and keep yourself safe as well. And so we'll be seeing you again, and we have about 10 seconds left. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.